All right, guys. Hey, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is much appreciated. My name is Austin. This here is
Amar.
Amar. I almost said Amar for my name. How ridiculous was that? I was reading yours. Anyways, this is Bring Your A Game. So I'm sure some of you have seen us on the starting five under the Crazy Ants umbrella here. So we have branched off to our own show that we will be posting weekly, shooting these here on Tuesdays. Hopefully going up Wednesdays, Thursdays, but we're going to try and keep the same consistent schedule as much as possible. But we both figured we can kind of we want to spread our wings a little bit. We want to show how high we can fly with the two of us here, and just a little back and forth, just to cover the major topics in sports, not just the NBA and the NFL, but a few of those other niche ones we don't cover in the starting five. And I got to tell you, I'm really excited to do this, Amar. I'm stoked. I've been wanting to do this with you for a while. I've talked about it with you over Facebook for years, and so man, I am just really, really excited to be getting into this, man.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's go.
Hell yeah! So we're gonna start off this show with just our top stories throughout the sport or throughout the sports world. We've got a lot of things coming up. The biggest one is the NBA Finals. Our first, I guess, question or top story is going to be who can be the breakout player of the series. Me personally, I think this is where Tyler Herro really cements and takes that next step. Win or lose, which I do have the Lakers in six. I honestly believe that this is just like with the Eastern Conference championship or Eastern Conference finals. I think this is just going to be another opportunity, another thing for Tyler Herro to just kind of take that step to show that he can be a superstar. He can be a guy on this squad that can take over games with his ability to shoot the ball.
So I think as far as in the context of going from a star to a superstar in the league, kind of from a mainstream perspective, I think this is Jimmy Butler's opportunity to really shine and really show, he's the man right now. If win or lose, I think if they make it a competitive series and he balls out, then that's big for him, legacy wise, profile wise. As far as like a breakout player that maybe no one's talking about, who they could be talking about by the end of the series, I'm looking at Duncan Robinson. And I think
Yeah.
that if this series goes 6 or 7, or, Miami pulls an upset, it's going to be there's going to be a couple of games where Duncan Robinson has like 7 threes or 6 threes, or one of those games where he just goes off like Danny Green did for San Antonio back in the
He's
day.
sneaky
You know,
good too, man.
he
That's the
is, yeah,
thing is Duncan is a sneaky player. He's just a guy that he comes in off the bench. He doesn't play, 30, 40 minutes by any means, but man, he can, even in the Eastern Conference Championship, he played some like really important minutes, man. I mean,
yeah,
he came off the bench and did a lot of incredible things to put them in the position to be in the finals.
yeah. And I think on the Lakers side, I mean, you're going to have LeBron and AD are going to do their thing, but if there's someone who can really make a difference for them, is I think Marquise Morris. He's had some big games in the postseason, and another guy. He's a shooter. If he gets hot, he can have one of those games. Like I think it was against Houston. He had like 4 threes in the first half of one game. Really like set the tone for him. So I think someone like Morris can kind of step up for the Lakers and get people talking about it.
Man, and I got to tell you, Morris, I think, has really grown into that role there off of the Lakers bench. I mean, I think allowing him to, because I'm not going to say he was like a superstar or anything, but there was a period of time where like he was a name that we all knew. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think putting him in a position where you just kind of allow him to slip onto the court and stand around and shoot the ball and just not. I mean, the guy's got no pressure on his shoulders to be any kind of offensive weapon. Obviously, when you get the open shots, make sure you make them.
Right.
But other than that, yeah, I think he has done a tremendous amount of growing, playing that role big time.
potential breakout players that people aren't talking about. One guy that is a known name, but he's still a role player, is Andre Iguodala. And I think with this series, there's so much talk about, what does this mean for LeBron? And what's this mean for his legacy? If he wins a fourth championship, what does that do for him? The GOAT top and everything. But another guy that could win a fourth title here is Andre Iguodala. So if Miami pulls this off, he wins his fourth championship. It would be, I think, his fourth in 6 years. Got a Finals MVP on top of that.
Oh yeah.
What do you think that this would do for his career and his legacy?
I think it cements him as a Hall of Famer. I mean, not that, honestly, personally, I think he's already got to be in that. I would have already put him there, obviously, depending on whatever class, he's one of those guys that I would have said that, like, eventually the class is going to be a weak enough class that, like, Andre Iguodala gets in, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we can't forget that, like, this guy was a primary scoring option, a superstar on the Philadelphia 76ers. Like, this guy led teams. And granted, he was never the guy that was going to take them to the championship game or anything, but he was that, like, top tier headline act. I mean, the guy that people like that was supposed to be the guy on those teams. Anyways, then he goes to Golden State, and despite what a lot of people I want to remember or not, but he played a huge vital role in that very first championship. I mean, he was like a very, very important figure to that, and the thing with, like, when KD came into that Golden State locker room, a lot of people forgot about a lot of the guys like Andre Iguodala that you have to give as much credit to as at least a guy like Draymond Green. You know what I mean? So you put him on another team where he's been the savvy veteran. He has came in and played some good minutes, though not a ton of them. And you put a fourth ring on there, like you mentioned. You add the fact that he has gotten a Finals MVP against LeBron James, mind you. And then some of his other, his all-stars and some of those accolades. I think winning this title cements his place in the Hall of Fame. And if I were him, I would retire.
Yeah. And I think, you brought up a good point. Like, I think because of what he did in Golden State, everyone knows him as a role player, and he's off the bench. But, there was a time he was like a 25-5 guy, with two steals a game, making all defensive teams. And, he made an all-star game with Philly. And he was at that all-star level, and, like, maybe a guy that, he wouldn't have been the number one guy on the title team, but he found that role with Golden State. And
I remember at one point they were being called a big four with Andre Iguodala. I mean, am I crazy in thinking that? Like, I specifically remember it was Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala. Like, that was considered a big four.
Yeah, and I remember I think I wrote a column going into, it would have been like the 2018 final, and I was like, if he gets this third championship, is he a Hall of Famer? So that conversation was kind of already being had before he won number 3.
Right.
And he had a track record of, it's not like he was just, a guy on the team that, played a little bit. Like, he got the Finals MVP. He always played a big role in their clinching games. The game where they finish out the series, that would be where he would have like 20 points, or he would make some big plays. Even after they brought in Durant, and Durant kind of took, some of those minutes and shots on the wing, Iguodala was still a major part. And with Miami, his numbers throughout the season, the second half of the season when he went there, his numbers weren't really there. Even most of the playoff run, he wasn't doing a lot. But that last closeout game against Boston, I think he had like 15 points or something like that. Like, it was kind of like Iguodala kind of woke up. And it's like, okay, this is Golden State Iguodala. And if I'm the Lakers, I saw that, and I'm just like, oh, man. Like, because now he's not just some dude off the bench. Like,
well, and I'll tell you, I think
Spo
played that, like, he played those last couple games or whatever really, really well with Andre, where he just he realized at that point, you know what, this is the moment that I need a guy with that championship experience to come in on the floor. And that's your guy. That's the exact reason why they brought him to this Heat organization, is because for that moment right there, hey, the guy may be old, he may be washed up, he may be past his prime, but this is a guy who's won 3 rings, who's been around Hall of Fames, legends, all of this stuff. This is the guy who's going to be able to look and turn to the Tyler Herros or the Duncan Robinsons or any of those other young guys, the Bam Adebayos, and say, hey, buddy, I know you're tired and I know this sucks, but let's get your ass in gear. You know what I mean? This is what we play for. This is the guy to remind them on that, because let's be real, and I don't say that, maybe I'm wrong when I say this, but I've never saw Jimmy Butler as that leader type. He's a very intense guy, and he holds his players or his teammates to a high accountability threshold. But I've never known him to be a guy like a LeBron James that's really going to pick his guys up,
So, yeah, I think having the veteran vocal leader being someone who's also out there on the court, which instead of just saying it on the bench, saying it in the locker room, is going to be big, for Miami and Iguodala being able to be out there with those guys and get the most of what's going out there on the court and then be athlete.
Right. No, and I totally agree. So that's such a huge, important role that not enough people, put enough emphasis on, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And so, as far as his legacy, because I think maybe the comparison people would make is to Robert Horry, and who has 7 rings, more than it would be 4 for Iguodala or 3 if they lose here. But it's Iguodala played a bigger role for his title teams than Horry played for some of his. I mean, Horry hits those big shots.
Right.
There was no series where Horry was going to win finals.
No, not even close.
And it wasn't Horry wasn't the defensive stopper in addition to the points he was scoring. So, he would have the big shot or a big fourth quarter here and there. So it's Iguodala, you've got elements of Robert Horry's resume, but the knock with Horry was okay, but he was never an all-star. He was never on defensive team. He never got the awards. He just got team success. And Iguodala's going to have the team success along with some of the individual awards, as a Hall of Fame candidate. So it's you give him for knocking off LeBron, for if they win this one. I think that makes a very good Hall of Fame case for him.
Yeah. I don't see how you deny him that Hall of Fame. I think he just has the resume to stack up at that point. You can't deny 4 championships. You can't deny the things that he did beforehand and the things that he did to win those championships. And it wasn't like he just hit one or, a handful of big shots in those. He was important pieces. Now, that actually brings us to our next subject, our next top story or top question here is a man who is in the midst of, I guess, what you would call the prime of his career, and who most would consider the face of Major League Baseball, and that's Mike Trout. And there's personally for Amar and I, this is why we say bring your A game, okay? Because you got to know how to ask these questions, how to pose these questions. You got to understand to look so much deeper than just some numbers and some accolades. There's a lot more that goes into these things. There's levels to this shit, mind you, okay? So our next question that we get into is Mike Trout. He's made the playoffs once in 9 seasons. And in that one time that he made the playoffs, he did get swept. Now, can he honestly be in the talks for GOAT if he doesn't win anything? Can he still be considered the face of baseball if he cannot have consistent success, at least making it to the playoffs, let alone finishing his career without a single World Series? I mean, all the MVPs are great, But man, we watched it happen to guys like Peyton Manning, where they put up these incredible regular season, and a lot of people get swept up in the moment. They did the same thing with Kobe. They did the same thing with Peyton Manning, and they're doing the same thing with Mike Trout, where there's just this constant argument that he has to be the greatest of all time, or you can't discount it. You can't. There's no way that this guy can't be in the talks. What are you talking about? He's got MVPs. He's the greatest. He's the ultimate. But here's the problem that you run into is that once this guy retires and you really look at the resume and you say, man, he's got a lot of great regular season accolades, but where's the playoff wins? Where's the championships? Where's the numbers in the playoffs? Where, you know what I mean? How can you stack that up against guys who have consistently performed under the brightest lights and in the biggest moments? I personally don't even think he has any business being in that conversation myself. But what do you think, Amar?
I think it says more about Major League Baseball than it does about Mike Trout. That he's like the face of the game. They, as a league, haven't done a good job of like building superstars, of building marketable stars. You know, I'm not like a hardcore baseball fan. You know, I watch my team plays, the Seattle Mariners. They play the Angels a lot, so I've seen Mike Trout a lot. Mike Trout, he's like a great player.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I'm like the league doesn't do like Mike Trout's not the face of the league. It's like who is it? And there's only candidates, and they're kind of weak candidates. It's like okay, if not Mike Trout, who's the face of the league? Is it like Aaron Judge? Is it Mookie Betts? Is it like
Bryce Harper?
Is it like I don't know?
Is it a pitcher? Is there a pitcher that and here's the problem is like the pitcher is probably the most important position on the baseball field. Like that is essentially your quarterback of the baseball field, at least in the sense that like I mean he touches the ball on every single play on the defensive end. But is there really a pitcher that's like got enough personality, enough personal accolades, has shown enough like because I feel like to be that guy, and that's where Mike Trout, like he becomes just that easy default answer because he like when you watch this guy play in the regular, he's so much better than everybody else, right? Like he's so clearly the best baseball player on the field when you're watching him, like that's the guy. But like where's that disconnect? Because it's not like the guy hasn't been on success or talented teams. He had Albert Pujols, though not at the peak of his prime, at the tail end of his prime, who is still pretty darn good and putting up big numbers. They just got the oh god, he's the pitcher and the hitter. The man
Ohtani.
Yeah.
Ohtani,
so they got him, and he's shaping up to be everything that we kind of predicted and hoped that he would be, which, God damn it, why didn't the Mariners get him that? But that's for a whole nother thing. But so I guess my point is it's not like the guy's playing with just scrubs, you know what I mean? So he's had talented rosters. Didn't he, and I could be wrong, but didn't he have Andrelton Simmons or whatever his name was for a period of time?
Yeah, he was on the Angels recently.
Yeah, the shortstop, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's like a multiple Gold Glove winning, like, you know, that's a guy. If I know who that guy is, then that's a guy that like baseball people. That's a star. You know what I mean? Like I follow the Mariners very loosely, so if I know who this guy is, he's got to have done something in the league. So it's not like this guy's playing with a bunch of scrubs, yet somehow, for some reason, he just can't get him over that hump. He can't get them to – there's no reason that this guy should be competing with the Mariners for who takes second and third place in the division. You know what I mean? Like, they should be the clear-cut favorite to win the division every single year.
And it's like with baseball. Like, I understand that one player can't take over a game like in basketball or sometimes even in football, depending kind of on the position. Mike Trout could go 4 for 4 with 4 home runs and they can still lose the game because they gave up too many runs or the other guys didn't hit or whatever. So it's not like a baseball player can really carry a team to the playoffs, to the World Series. But you just got to think, if you're really the best, the best currently, but they're talking about him being the best ever. And
Right.
you can't even, and you've played 3 playoff games in 9 years, lost all those games, and he hit 083 in that series.
That's
like
terrible. Like
right, he
1
wasn't
for
even good.
12 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's horrible.
Yeah, and I remember for a long time Barry Bonds kind of had that knock on him that he didn't perform well in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
He redeemed himself. I don't know. I think he took it to the World Series like late in his career. But yeah, it's just weird. I can't think of another scenario in another sport where somebody would be the face of the game and be talked about as maybe the best ever, and they've been to the playoffs one time. Imagine if like LeBron James had only been in the playoffs one time.
Oh my god!
I'm trying to think like my favorite NBA player of all time, Tracy McGrady.
Right.
And the thing on him for the longest time was he couldn't get out of the first round.
Right.
But he got there. He got into the playoffs, and he was on some bad teams.
Oh yeah, horrible teams.
But that inability to get past the first round is why he wasn't up there with Kobe as far as reputation.
Right.
As far as fame,
he just
reputation,
didn't have that
celebrity.
championship DNA, I guess you want to call it.
Because talent-wise, T-Mac was just as good as Kobe, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but he didn't have the team success, and so he couldn't be the face of the league. He couldn't be,
and that's why he's probably the most controversial Hall of Famer that at least that I can remember, except for like Yao Ming maybe, but he also had he opened up, he pretty much created that relationship between the U.S. and the China Basketball League or Chinese Basketball League. I apologize for the misspeak, but so I get you're like, well, I guess I could, you can give him credit for that or whatever. But yeah, T-Mac has probably got to be the most controversial Hall of Fame. Like if there's anybody, it'd be like if you had to eliminate a Hall of Famer today from the Hall of Fame, who would it be? I think like 90% of people, maybe 99%, other than you, Amar Burton, would say that T-Mac needs to be eliminated.
Yeah. And then so you take T-Mac, and if you try to, we just said he's as talented as Kobe was, numbers right there with Kobe's numbers, right there with LeBron's numbers. But if you try to make a T-Mac GOAT argument, like you get laughed at. They're like how can T-Mac be the GOAT and he's not got past first round?
Doesn't even have a single ring. Yeah, I mean that alone in itself is there's just no way.
Yeah, so how can Mike Trout be in these GOAT conversations when he doesn't have not even it's in my opinion okay, if you don't have a World Series victory, fine, but you haven't even got past the first round and you only got there once, and we're getting on a decade of this. That's crazy.
Right, and that's what's again, I'm right there with you. I can't think of any other sport or really any other time where a guy was considered the best in the league, the guy, the man, this is the guy, and he's done.
Yeah, Barry Sanders. I mean, but they made the playoffs a few times with him. Detroit did.
Yeah, they did. And that's the thing. I think even, especially in baseball, I do think there is, because there is an expectation that to win a World Series, everything has to go right. Your starting pitching has to pitch well. Your rotational guys have to come in and play well. Your closers have to close. Your power hitters have to hit the bombs. Your contact guys got to get on base, and you know what I mean? And I get that all of those pieces have to work together. But I think to not even be able to be a war guy, if there's a lot of people out there that really consider that to be an end-all be-all to how valuable somebody is. And maybe his war is, I haven't checked it. I probably should have done my homework on it ahead of time. But maybe his war just needs to be a couple games better. Then that's wins above replacement for anybody who doesn't know that. That's basically hey, if with Mike Trout in the lineup, this team wins X amount more games because of that. For those of you out in YouTube land or podcast land or whatever that don't understand what war is. Now, I guess my point is that it's just to not even make it, to only make it one single time.
Yeah,
Like
and I think
come on, come
and I think
on.
I think A Rod was kind of in a similar position when he was with Texas because he was winning. He won an
Yeah,
MVP, and he was up there in that conversation. But I think he wasn't as far as celebrity or fame or whatever. He was never as big as like Derek Jeter because he wasn't
no.
winning, and he didn't really get close to that until he left Texas and went to New York and he starts winning.
Yes.
Now, I believe Mike Trout is like locked into a contract, but like he's not going nowhere. Like he's in
I
Anaheim.
believe so as well, yeah. Yeah, he'll be
Yeah,
there for the long haul.
yeah. So it's like he's got to make it work there. He can't, go to the Dodgers, go to the Yankees, and kind of latch on to a winner
And he
there.
just doesn't seem like the guy that's going to try to force his way out of anywhere either. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right.
Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, he's there for the long haul, but
So he's amazing. He's going to be a Hall of Famer easy. He's going to make a $1 billion.
absolutely. And that's the
So
thing to keep in
you
mind.
know,
Like, by no means are either one of us saying that he's, doesn't deserve, he deserves the MVPs. He deserves
mhm,
the personal accolades and the praise that he's gotten, just maybe not to the extent that he's gotten, because
yeah,
let's just remember their regular season is important, but postseason is just as important.
mhm,
And, I just, putting him up in the GOAT talks is maybe a little premature.
yeah,
I wouldn't even, when you're talking GOAT talks, you're talking guys like Hank Aaron, you're talking guys like Derek Jeter to an extent. To me, Ken Griffey Jr. is the GOAT to me. That's by far like the sweetest swing in baseball. The guy was the best five-tool player that I've ever personally seen live, and I've watched a lot of live baseball games in my day. But like that's the guy that you emulate your game after. But
yeah.
even for most, that's an iffy convo because he doesn't have the postseason
Yeah.
success. You know
But
what I
he
mean?
but he has at least like one iconic postseason moment.
As an integral part too. When
Right.
he hit that home run or whatever
Mhm.
in that the 95
Yeah.
series there. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, man.
When
That
yeah.
like
And then
come on.
when he came around, he
He
scored the
saved the
winning run.
Mariners organization.
All right. So this we talked a little bit in that about Mike Trout, and we kind of hit on the NBA a little bit. So I'm going to use that to we'll circle back to some NBA talk. Because these are two guys that I want to talk about now because they're going to be forgotten like for the rest of the for the rest of the postseason.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that in their losing efforts in the last round that Jamal Murray and Jason Tatum became superstars?
I think Jamal Murray became a recognizable star. I honestly think Jason Tatum took a step back, to be
Mm,
perfectly honest. Yeah. I
mm,
mean, don't get me wrong, he had some really incredible moments in that game, but like people also forget, what was it, game 4 or 5 or whatever. He started the game like 0 for 7, dude. Like didn't make a single shot in the entire first half. And granted, he did come back and have a really incredible game. I just think that I don't think that series was as great as a lot of people think it was for him. I think that first Boston run, that first playoff run where they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, I think he was like a more efficient player then, to be perfectly honest, right? And I think he is. I think his problem is he's tried to take on that role as superstar, but like he has talent around him. Jaylen Brown is no slouch like that. He's a good player, and Kemba Walker to me is the most underrated player in the league. I mean, he's a very, very good player. And so I don't think I think the only way for Tatum to have taken that step from, because I think he's a star. I think to take him from star to legitimate superstar would have been for him to overcome what the Heat were doing and take them to the finals. That was going to be the
mm,
only way that you go, okay, well, yeah, Jason Tatum, that's a guy to watch out for as being that next big thing in the league. And I'm a huge Tatum fan. I
mm.
like his game, but I think he collapses in those moments.
Okay. I think that I think one thing Tatum did do is he kind of established that like he's the guy on that team, because I think going into the season, they're coming off of the Kyrie era, and it was kind of like, okay, like, is Kemba the guy? Is Tatum the guy? Is
I know a
Jaylen
lot of
Brown
people that called for Tatum to trade Tatum. Jalen's the guy. That's the stalwart. That's the defensive. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then they were bringing in Kemba Walker, who he'd been an All-Star and all that. So I think in this postseason, I think Tatum kind of made himself like, okay, I'm the guy in this team. Superstar, though, I'd agree with you. I'd say no. I don't think he's there yet. Jamal Murray, I mean, I think he's like right there. I kind of want to say he might be a superstar now.
Yeah, I have such a hard time classifying him there because it's like,
because it was just one run, kind of
right. Like people have a hard and this season, people even in the regular basketball world where we're not dealing with COVID or we're not dealing with it, a 3-month long break in between the regular season and the play or whatever. Like even in regular basketball, people have regular season amnesia. And I'm not saying that, like, don't get me wrong, the Nuggets were good in the regular season and like they were good last year and like they were definitely like in position. I think that I think if you would have read the signs ahead of time, you could have seen this coming. Maybe not in the fashion that they did back-to-back 3-1 overcomes. And, like, that's huge. That's crazy. I get that. But I think, like, you had to have understood the talent that was on that team. But I think once you saw him, it's almost like you beat up all the kids at your school, right? And then you go home to Big Brother, which is LeBron James in this case, and you're like, I still ain't shit, really. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really not. Like, I beat up all the kids at school, but, like, Big Brother's here, and, like, he's really letting me know I still ain't that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I kind of like Murray's run. It kind of reminded me of, like, the Damian Lillard runs where he has that postseason where, like, he knocks off a team in the first round. And he has a 50-point game, and he has a game winner. And, like, everyone's talking like, oh, Damian Lillard, like he's the guy now. He's top 10 now, or he's a superstar or whatever. And then it's like, but then he has a series where he kind of struggles, or they kind of quietly fade away, and then he has to kind of start over again the next season, building up that superstar, superstar cash, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
I think Murray, though, like, he played great throughout. Even in the Lakers series, I mean, he, it wasn't like he kind of fizzled out. It was like the team kind of fizzled out.
Right.
But like he was there. Like, he was doing it. And so
I gotta say, my all-time favorite moment from that series is when. And I wish we had the technical stuff worked out because this would be a great one to show on a green screen behind me. But there was a moment where LeBron catches an inbound pass and just hucks it full court. And Jokic is trying to run back, and he just sees the ball go over his head. And he has just such a look of defeat, like, God damn it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, man, I'm so done with this shit. Man, him and Murray both, dude, they put their fucking hearts into the – you know what I mean? Like, they're I remember, what was it that's who did they play in the second round? I can't believe I'm
Utah.
No,
the Clippers.
Clippers, yeah. In that Clippers series, it was like game 4 or 5. They played like all but 3 minutes of the whole game. You know what I mean? Like they relied heavily on those two guys.
Yeah, and you could argue that Jokic is like the best player on the team, or maybe the most important player on the team, but I don't think he's ever going to be like this, like a superstar as far as like the fame element of it, the celebrity element of it. And I don't know if it's because I can't say it's because he's not from here, because like Giannis is a superstar, Luka's going to be a superstar. But there's just something about him, like he doesn't like resonate with people. I think Jamal Murray can do that. Like, and especially this postseason, like those interviews he gave after some of the games where he was talking about, social issues, and like he got really emotional and stuff. I think that kind of stuff, in addition to what he did on the court, is going to like make him a bigger star.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's clearly a vocal leader on that team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's clearly a guy that can rally his troops, that can that can speak up, and everybody listens, and they can back it up with his play as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I think you're right. It might be kind of like like Donovan Mitchell. Like everyone was talking about him, and then they got eliminated, and then when next season starts, they'll kind of forget about him again because
he's still going to be in this exact conversation where is he or isn't he?
Right. And then, they'll forget about him because his team's not on national TV a lot. And then they'll get to the postseason, he'll score 50 and 40, and then we're back to the same place.
Right. I mean, it's nothing different. The only difference is that our regular season was 3-4 months ago or whatever. But even when the regular season's 2 weeks removed or whatever it is from the playoffs, once these playoff games start going, everybody forgets about it. Everybody's crying. Why did so-and-so not win MVP or get more love for it? Or why did so-and-so not win Rookie of the Year? Look at what they're doing coming off the bench for this team or that team. Guys, we got to remember, this is it's the postseason. It is after the regular season. And though it may not matter as much to some of these big superstars like LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard and Anthony Davis, and et cetera, it still matters. You still have to win in the regular season to make it to the postseason. And the teams that played in the bubble, they weren't just given a Willy Wonka golden ticket to, hey, come join the bubble and let's play for the. No, you had to have been in position to have been in the playoffs regardless. So let's not forget that these guys played well and played bad during the regular season.
Yeah, and you're kind of speaking to something where a lot, especially in basketball, fans, I want to say they focus too much on the playoffs, because you think about it, if you make a deep playoff run, then you play about 20 games, I believe, right? 20, 25, something like that, versus an 82-game regular season. So basically, the regular season is 80% of your resume.
Right.
It's 80, you tally up a guy's career, when he's done. The regular season is going to be 80 to 90% of what he did, but I think so many times we only focus on what they did in the playoffs. And it's kind of strange. And I understand that, there are regular season games that are just very forgettable and, don't mean anything, and stretches of the regular season that, people aren't really watching, and, some teams are going through the motions or whatever, but it's just I think sometimes, we put too much focus on, I don't even know what that guy did in the regular season, but look at what he did in the playoffs. And this is what defines him as a player.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that actually is a great segue to move into our last couple topics here before we get into some of our other segments, and talking about great players and what's going on with them. Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, the Falcons. Is their Super Bowl window closed? I mean, are they officially done? I personally have a hot take for this that I'm going to save till the end of the show here. But I mean, look at, they're 0-3. They can't seem to hold on to a lead for the life of them. I mean, at this point, do you just blow that team up and get rid of it? I honestly, it's not like Matt Ryan's playing the absolute worst football of his career, and Julio Jones has dealt with some injury issues for sure. But man, at this point, you got to just be ready to blow it up, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of talk about, they should fire the coach, especially after, blowing the last 2 weeks, blowing leads to the Cowboys and to the Bears. I don't feel like any team is going to fire a coach in the middle of this season, just the way things are with COVID and everything, because to bring in a new guy, unless you're going to elevate an assistant, I guess, to bring in a new guy is going to be a lot more work, and it's going to be a lot more complicated because you can't do, the interviews and, whatever as you would normally do them. So I kind of feel like I don't see Atlanta firing Quinn this year. During the season. After the season, yeah, I mean,
Right,
if things keep going
right.
the way they're
I
going.
think there's just
Um,
there's so much uncertainty around how you replace the position, and but speaking on Matt Ryan and Julio Jones especially, they're done. I mean, there's no way. I'm sorry, but there's no way either one of those are seeing a championship in an Atlanta Falcons jersey. It's just not happening. Their window is closed. I'm sorry it was so short, Atlanta, but game is over. Time to rebuild. If anything, they really should make a run for that Trevor Lawrence lottery because they have an opportunity to win it.
yeah, and I mean, I look at Matt Ryan and I think, young guy, but he's 35.
Right.
Like he's older than he looks, and so I don't know how long he has to play at a high level, like at an elite level. Um, it just seems like there's just something like mental going on with them or psychological or whatever that like it's starting to get to them that they blow these leads, and it's becoming like this thing in their head. And yeah, like they might need to just like clean slate, blow it up. You know, yeah, like I don't like the idea of any football team tanking because then it's like if you're not playing to win in football, you're gonna get hurt. Like, um, but organizationally, yeah, are they going to complain if they get the number one pick and can take Trevor Lawrence to start over? No,
Right, right.
and that
It's gonna. I think they have more issues on the other side of the football.
yeah,
Personally, the
yeah.
defensive side of the football.
Uh,
But
but the fact,
either way,
right, and the fact that we're talking about blowing it up and starting over. I mean, yeah, the Super Bowl window's closed. It's
right.
just like, is this salvageable at all? Is the
So, and that's what I was going to ask too. Is what do you do? I mean, do you just try to trade off all the assets
mhm,
and scrap it? You know what I
mhm,
mean? Or do you just tank it and try to find a few high key draft pieces for the defense and still run? Because I mean, if you look at it, their offense isn't. It's not like their offense is performing bad. It's not. Like
mhm,
their offense is still putting up points, though it's seeming to have issues closing in big games. But personally, I felt that that's always a defense's responsibility, anyways.
mhm,
If your offense can put 30 plus points on the board, then it's your responsibility as a defense to hold that number, and you should be able to prevent the offense from scoring 30 plus points on the board. That's your responsibility as a defense.
mhm,
So but that's some stuff that I'm going to be going into a little bit later, so I don't want to dive into it too much. But what I
mhm,
would like to get into our last top story here before we get into some of our segments. So let's try and keep this one a little bit shorter. We're kind of running on time here. But who is the most exciting NFL player today? I'm saying Russell Wilson. I think it's just an absolute given that the guy is on a rampage this year to win MVP and to carry his team to a Super Bowl. I think that
mhm,
he is just on a warpath. He's making every single throw possible. He just came off of another 5 touchdown game. Personally, I think that was his worst game of the season, and he threw five freaking touchdowns and bring the team back again and just did all of these crazy mind-blowing things, had my heart beating out of my chest. I thought I was going to throw up by the end of the
mhm.
game.
Yeah.
Like that guy, the things that he does, there nobody. Lamar Jackson has the jukes, Patrick Mahomes has the arm, Russell Wilson has all of it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like he's just not 6'5", but the guy is the most exciting player in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and you know what? We first were talking about and the reason it came up is I think it was Tony Gonzalez during one of their pregame segments or whatever. He said that Kyler Murray was the most exciting player in the league, um, and we had kind of amongst our kind of group were kind of talking about that, and then on the heels of that, we had like Dale Sayers passed away. And so it was
Right.
really, people were talking about him and how he was the precursor to Barry Sanders. And I think the exciting player label I think a lot of people just think of like the jukes and the highlights and, the athleticism. But the reason why I was going to say Russell Wilson, to agree with you, is not only that, but like Russell Wilson always just seems to be in these close, exciting games. And
Right.
games that go down to the wire. I mean, I swear, like every Seahawks game goes down to the fourth quarter, or goes
Oh
down to
yeah.
the last play.
Yeah, we were
Um,
blowing them out by halftime, bud, and then
mhm,
we had to make another fourth quarter drive to come back and
mhm. Yeah, it's
oh,
just like, and so yeah, like you said, Russell Wilson, he has the style wise an exciting player, but then he just always seems to find himself in these clutch moments, in these fourth quarters and overtimes that the game itself is exciting. And so yeah, I would agree with you. I would say Russell Wilson's the most exciting guy in the NFL right now.
absolutely, and
Mhm.
and I do not see how anybody could disagree with that. However, we did touch on a incredibly key. Hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I need one more player. 11. So we touched on an incredible for our next segment. We're done with our top stories. We're gonna move along our segments because we got a great one coming up, and we got someone waiting on us. So we want to get to that. But we are going into a deep dive analysis of little drum roll. This week is going to be the Seahawks' terrible defense. Um, so one of my favorite things about sports in general is just analyzing sports. I love to do it. I love looking at all the nuances. I love watching film probably as much as most NFL players do. I played the game from God, for years of my life, all the way up through high school. I was never what I wanted to be, but a lot of that came down to my own inability to go to class. But the big thing is that I just love it, and so I know there's a lot of people out there that watch these shows solely to get some insight and to hopefully get some help, so you can have a few better talking points. Everybody, we all have that one friend. I know I especially had that one friend in my old high school crew of buddies or whatever that man, they really wish that they had someone to teach them how to talk sports because they make a lot of key mistakes. So that's kind of what this segment's going into, as well as those of you who are like me and like Amar, who maybe like looking at that stuff and like kind of understanding and seeing, not that I'm making any coaching moves, but, I still like to analyze things as much as possible. So here's what we're going to go into. Now, let me start this off by saying I think Jamal Adams was not worth 2, but I think Jamal Adams was worth as much as 3 first-round picks. Yes, I would have paid 3 first-round picks to acquire Jamal Adams. He has absolutely been everywhere on the field. Make sure you lock that guy into your mind whenever you watch the Seahawks defense when he's playing again. He's a little bit hurt. He'll be day-to-day here with that groin injury. But make sure you lock him into your mind and you watch him on every play because the guy is just all over the field. He's a huge integral part in our pass rush right now because we don't seem to have one. He's a huge part in stopping the run. Coverage skills need a little bit help. And so that's what we get into. Now, what a lot of people seem to forget is that Seattle hasn't ran anything much different than what they even ran during the Legion of Boom era. And that's called a base cover 3. Now, with a base cover 3 and the way that Seattle runs it, here's how it typically looks. Let's hope you can see that. Eventually, we're going to get technically savvy, and that's where things are going to fix. Now, something to look here. So your base cover 3. So you have 4 down defensive linemen. These are your edge rushers. These are your defensive tackles, okay? These guys here, your X's here, those are your 2 linebackers. This is your Bobby Wagner. This is your KJ Wright. That's why you almost always see them on the field because they're the ones that are on the field as the leaders, kind of pushing everything. Now, this guy here that looks like he could be into a linebacker spot, but isn't, that's your Jamal Adams. That's who you typically want to watch on every single defensive play. Now, why is he here and why is he here? Because the way that the Seahawks run a base cover 3 is your free safety is like a center fielder. So his job is to play sideline to sideline, okay, and cover all of that real estate. Now, that's why, again, the Seahawks have not changed what they've done defensive. There's been a few different packages with defensive coordinator to defensive coordinator, but overall, Pete Carroll's philosophy is the exact same. One of the reasons that the Seahawks are having so much issue running this year compared to years past or even the last couple years is they just don't have the talent. They just don't. I hate to say it. As a huge Seahawks homer, you see all the stuff here. I've shown the tattoo. I love the Seahawks, but they do not have the talent. What made this defense so great and so game-changing, and here I'll show you. So these are your cornerbacks here, and then you have your nickel corner here. So again, linemen, linebackers, cornerbacks, and then these are your two safeties. Now, what made this defense so great in the Legion of Boom era is Earl Thomas. It was an absolute freak in his prime. He was arguably the best sideline-to-sideline player in the history of the league. The guy could be here. He could be cheating here to the right, meaning that in his back pedal, as he watches, his job is to sit back there and watch everything in front of him. He could be cheating off to the right to help these guys in coverage because they have two, and watch as his cornerback, typically Brandon Browner or whoever was on that side, start to get burned down the field. And because he was so fast, he could make that turn and be to the ball here to break up any kind of deep pass play before the ball gets there, regardless of how soon the quarterback's like if the quarterback needed a 3rd and 30, it was almost impossible to do it on Earl Thomas, at least very, very hard. Now, again, we haven't changed anything that we've done from that era. Jamal Adams is our Cam Chancellor. Our Cam Chancellor was a vital part, maybe even more vital than Earl Thomas, because not only was he a huge, huge piece in the run game, that's why he's what's called a box safety. This is your box. That's your box right there. Well, actually, it's more like right here. But a box safety is someone who stays in that box and watches the gaps here to watch the runs. Now, Cam Chancellor was also a box safety. Horrible in coverage. Made some good coverage plays, but horrible in coverage. The Seahawks, year after year, were one of the worst, even during the Legion of Boom era, were one of the worst defensive teams against the tight end. And that's because Cam Chancellor was slow, okay? He could hit like a truck, but the guy could not cover man-to-man. Now, that's why everybody plays a zone coverage. He's got a zone, he's got a zone, he's got a zone, he's got a zone, and then his job here is to primarily watch the run and then cover the zone here. But when you don't have an Earl Thomas and you have a Cam Chancellor, you're going to give up huge plays. Quandre Diggs is a huge upgrade at safety, but he is not an Earl Thomas. Shaquille Griffin is a great piece to have. Quentin Dunbar, another great piece to have. I myself believe that we were getting back to the Legion of Boom era, but here 3 weeks in, the problem that we've run into is that we have the length, we have the size, we have all of these pieces, but they're just not talented enough. Okay, Griffin and Dunbar both are number 2 corners at best, and those are roles that they would feel great, but neither one of them is Richard Sherman. Quentin Diggs is a great safety who can do that job serviceably. But the problem is that Seahawks fans, we are not used to that job being done serviceably. We're used to that job being done at a Hall of Fame level. So these are the things that you have to watch. And Jamal Adams, he can only do so much. His job primarily is to rush the quarterback, stop the run, and keep anything from over the middle as far as a tight end goes. But much like Cam Chancellor, he's not great in man-to-man coverage. So again, this is why the Seahawks are the worst passing defense in the league. These are the things that you need to look out for Super Bowl Sunday, or not Super Bowl Sunday, but football Sundays. And as you watch these games, so you can stay in the conversation with your friends and you know, kind of what you're talking about, right? So how'd I do there, Mar?
I feel like I learned something.
Good. I hope so.
Yeah,
That's the whole goal here. So I know
yeah.
I tried to now please keep in mind for any I know that there might be some comments, Austin, well, you didn't quite get I'm trying to keep this as elementary as possible
Mhm.
because there's some people that really just want to have that insight so that they can have these kind of conversations with their friends and family as they're watching football or just know understand the game a little bit better if they maybe never played it or anything like that. However, so we're gonna move out of that into our next segment, which I think is a freaking awesome segment. I'm gonna throw it over to you, Amar. Go ahead and introduce your segment. Let's get into it, and then let's get into our guest here for the evening.
All right. So now, anyone who knows me, and you don't even really have to know me that well. If you just follow me on social media, which I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm R_206. If you know anything about me, you know my favorite thing in the world is being a dad. I'm new at it. I'm a rookie, but I got my two twin boys. They are 3.5 months old, and I mean my as much as I love this stage of it, I can't wait until I'm going to be able to talk sports with them. And Austin, you've got kids.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
assuming the same way. Um, when I was a kid, my dad he told me stories about athletes and teams and sports moments that I wasn't around for, or maybe I would have been too young to remember. He told me about Jack Tatum and the Oakland Raiders of the '70s. That was like his favorite team. The Sonics 1979 NBA championship. He told me about Muhammad Ali, O.J. Simpson, Louis Tiant. He was like this great Cuban pitcher, pitched for the Red Sox and the Indians. All stuff that I was either wasn't around for, or I was too young. But he told me these stories, and I think that kind of instilled this love of sports that I've always had. That made me a fan. It made me want to play sports when I was old enough, and it kind of ultimately led me to choosing this career I've had, like in sports media. And so when that time comes with my kids, I want to do the same thing. Not that I want them to be in sports media. I mean, if they want to be doctors and lawyers and accountants, like I'm totally cool with that.
Nope, they need to write for the local newspaper every week. No.
Yeah, like let's own the local newspaper. How about
Right,
yeah.
right.
So but yeah, so my segment is the things that I want to tell my kids about sports. So it's going to be a little bit of history, but also a little bit of what's currently going on, right?
I love it. Let's get into it.
So today, the thing that I'm going to tell my kids about are the Seattle Storm and the WNBA.
Yes.
Now you have to remind a lot of people, because Austin and I were both up here in the Seattle area. You have to remind a lot of people up here, but the Storm are actually Seattle's most successful franchise.
Their most decorated franchise in Seattle sports history is the Seattle Storm. Absolutely.
Yeah, like 3 WNBA championships, 3-0 whenever they appear in the WNBA finals, and they're headed back to the finals this week. They're going to face the Las Vegas Aces
with a very strong chance to win this finals too. They're facing a very good team, but yes, very much a strong chance to win this, which I'm excited to see.
Yeah, and if you're interested, game 1 is going to be on Friday, I believe, on ESPN2. Mm-hmm. So I'm old enough to remember before the WNBA existed, and it was in the mid '90s before the WNBA and the ABL, which is no longer it's defunct now. But before those got started, I mean, if you were a women's basketball player in America, you kind of had to go overseas if you wanted to play pro ball at like a high level. There were some leagues in the U.S. that will pop up here and there, but nothing stuck or kind of made an impact the way that the WNBA's made it.
Bring your mic up a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, like nothing stuck or kind of made an impact the way that the WNBA has, right? And so in a lot of ways, college basketball was kind of the peak for a women's player in this country. You had college stars like Dawn Staley, Cynthia Cooper. Like, if they reach some notoriety here in college, after college, they would go overseas to play pro, and it was like you never really hear from them again, unless they were on the Olympic team or something. And the WNBA changed that, right? And a lot of players today, they play pro overseas, and they split time between overseas and in the U.S. Basically to make more money. But the WNBA is like a destination now, and like for little girls growing up playing basketball, like they're dreaming about playing in the WNBA now. And
that's the pinnacle for them.
Right. And you know what? I think this would be, I guess, off of that, a good time to bring up the fact that I wrote a book last year.
A great time to plug it. There we go.
Yeah. See, I wrote this book last year. It's called She Can Play Too. Sports.
And so for those of you who caught it, Amar really is in sports media. That is his job. He's a sports journalist / editor, and he's a book writer. So make sure that you pick that book up because it is really good.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. But yeah, like I wrote that book. It's called She Can Play Too. It's kind of about equality. It's about finding common ground in sports. You can find that on Amazon. Or Kindle, pick that up. Anyway, going back to the topic. So, I've always been a fan of women's basketball, and my earliest basketball memories are, me being 5 or 6 years old. I would go to my cousin, her high school game. She played point guard at Rainier Beach, which is one of the kind of elite high schools up here in this area for basketball. I would go to her games when I was a little kid, and so it was like my first exposure to basketball was women's basketball. And so to me, women's basketball isn't like this offshoot of real basketball. It's not like this other form of basketball. It's just basketball, and a lot of people, especially men, they don't see it like that. They see women's basketball as it's lesser than, it's not as good as men's basketball, or they don't dunk and they focus on all this other stuff. And I've never been like that, and don't intend to have teach my kids that. I want them to know women's basketball is basketball. So it's all
absolutely.
So with the Storm, this is one of the top franchises in WNBA history. They have the Lauren Jackson era. They have the Breanna Stewart era.
Oh, yeah.
And it's Sue Bird, who's been there for both of them. You've got Jewel.
Absolute legend.
Yeah, like Sue Bird. You talk about Seattle sports. I mean, Sue Bird is up there with Griffey and
Ichiro.
Ichiro and
Gary Payton.
Yeah,
all of them. Oh yeah, Russell
right,
Wilson, Sean Alexander, Matt Hasselbeck. Oh yeah, all of them. Yeah, Sue Bird's right there.
Right, she's been here this whole time. She's local legend. She lives up here. She's part of the community. But you've got her. You got Jewel Lloyd on the team currently. Jordan Canada on the current team. Going back in the past, Tina Thompson, Betty Lennox. She was the Finals MVP for that first championship they won. They've had so many great ball players come through, and in a non-COVID season, I'll go to 2 or 3 Storm home games during the year. And if you haven't been to a WNBA game, I would highly recommend that you go whenever we have a chance to go to sports games again. Sometimes it doesn't translate to TV, but the in-person experience watching WNBA, it's cool. You should go. Really.
If you're someone who can appreciate the sport of basketball,
exactly,
you're not just watching because you want to see, LeBron James do a huge dunk, or you're not just watching because of the names or the big highlight reels that you'll see on the ESPN Sports Center top 10 later. If you just truly can enjoy the art of the game, a WNBA game is it's so incredibly pure. You know what I mean? Just the fundamentals, the way they play the game, the pace at which they play. And don't get me wrong, there's some really talented gals that have really started making a name for them. I wish I should have done my homework. I apologize, but the center from the Las Vegas team, what is her name?
Asia Wilson.
She is amazing, dude. She's the biggest gal on the court, but she can shoot from almost all three. She's pretty proficient from all three levels. She plays great defense. But again, gals like Sue Bird and Brianna Thompson, I mean, all those guys, they're just incredibly talented players that just kind of fly under the radar because everybody dismisses the WNBA.
Yeah. So that's what, WNBA finals is getting started on Friday. Check it out if you can. When, we're back to a kind of a normal sports environment, go to a game if you can. It's a sport and a game that I want to share with my boys. And, that'll happen. So.
That's awesome, man. That is so awesome. Go ahead and check your messages, Amar. I just sent one to that group there. Go ahead and drop the link and introduce our next segment.
Right.
Yes.
So speaking of twins, all right, over the weekend, there was a pretty big boxing pay-per-view. Twin brothers, Jamel and Jamal Charlo, they fought on the same card in like a double main event. Jamal, he defended his WBC middleweight title, and Jamel unified 3 of the junior middleweight belts. So a question that comes up with the Charlo brothers, and it comes up all the time, it came up this past week, was will they ever fight each other? And the Klitschko brothers, if you remember them, they kind of got that same question when they were active. Both sets of brothers have said, look, there's no way they're going to fight each other. Like, it's just not going to happen. They can't bring themselves to fight their brother. And I know personally, I couldn't really fight my brother. I train in like Muay Thai and kickboxing, and like I could spar my brother, I think, kind of like a light sparring, just kind of messing around, working on your form. But like a real fight, like, with something on the line and you're trying to like knock out your opponent. I couldn't fight my brother. That wouldn't go down. So I was going to ask Austin, do you think that you could fight your brother?
Oh, without a doubt, 100%. Yeah.
Do you think you could beat your brother?
Well,
that's a different question.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not.
So what we're going to do here, I'm not going to have Austin fight his brother in the ring, but Austin can fight his brother on the mic. So we're calling this segment Sibling Rivalry, and we're going to have Austin. He's going to go head-to-head debate style with Dylan Holloway, his brother. So Dylan, we welcoming him onto the podcast now.
Well, thanks, guys. It is a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and you can find Dylan on Twitter. He's at Dylan Reports, DILLONREPORTS. So you can follow him for sports knowledge and overall entertainment value. I see Dylan hasn't yet shaved his playoff beard. I guess he's still.
It's because he's.
No, this is the quarantine beard, right? I'm in New Jersey, so we're still hanging on by a thread over here.
So what we're going to do is we're going to throw out some questions, and Austin and Dylan are going to go back and forth over them, and then after you watch them, you can go to the comment section when this episode is posted and just tell us who you think won the debate between the two of them. So.
And by how much I won it by.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As you can see, Dylan's done nothing but lock himself off in his room, pee in mason jars, and study sports. So I might be in over my head here.
Okay, so the first question I'm gonna throw at you guys is NFL coaches 3 weeks in, NFL coaches on the hot seat. Like, who's there, who should be, who shouldn't be, go.
So, Dylan, before you answer, actually, give us a little insight, give us a little background on you, and then give me your answer. Let's let the audience know who you are, because this will be a recurring segment. So get to know Dylan, because you will see him more often.
Well, I appreciate you guys bringing me here on the show. Like I said, it's a pleasure to be on my little brother's sports podcast. He's throwing me a bone over here. My name is Dylan. I graduated the 2-year degree at San Antonio College, where I was a sports editor for the Ranger newspaper there. Shout out the Ranger. I covered men's, women's basketball, volleyball, boxing, and a slew of other beats. Now I'm going to school at Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey, getting a bachelor's degree in sports journalism, and I just love sports. So.
All right, now give us your answer to Amar's first question there.
Well, the coach on the hot seat, I think it's got to be Dan Quinn, right? Like this guy, my man's seat is so hot, he's about to blast off to Mars over here. Like, his team is putting up record numbers, and they're really, really bad numbers. Like they said that the team was that they haven't had for 26 years. They got the most points scored by an 0-2 team in 26 years. That's terrible. You know what that means? It means the defense is awful. It means the defense is terrible. He's supposed to be a defensive mastermind, a defensive genius. This is a guy that was coaching the Seattle Seahawks Legion of Boom defense when they won the Super Bowl and then went to the Super Bowl the next year. And frankly, he's just not getting the job done. Like you can just see the guy's pants smoking during his media conferences after each historic collapse. They're historic collapses too. It's almost become comical how these guys are finding ways to lose. The onside kick, blowing leads in the fourth quarter, not running the ball. Like you might as well play Benny Hill music to the background of it.
It's almost as if the 28-3 collapse in the Super Bowl was like, that's just an afterthought at this point.
It's because they're gimmick. Like it's not even surprising anymore. They're like, oh, the Falcons found a new way to blow a huge lead.
So as much as I would love to agree with you as Dan Quinn being in the hottest of seats, because I will be touching on the Falcons a bit later in our segment here. I've got to say the coach in the hottest of seats right now is Adam Gase. And the reason being is that Adam Gase is a guy who has gotten all the talk, all the bravado, all of the QB guru this and the fixer, that guy or whatever. And he's had excuses made for him year after year after year, right? When he was in, Miami, it was the quarterback situation with Ryan Tannehill when he was hurt all the time, didn't have the talent, didn't have the this, whatever. Then he finally gets over to New York, gets a rookie quarterback who personally I've always called as an overrated quarterback. I've never believed in Sam Darnold. I can't believe in building a franchise off of a guy who is as careless with the ball as he is. It's very rare that works out. It's very rare that a guy like Peyton Manning turns into who he is after starting his career by throwing 21 interceptions. You know what I mean?
Hey, Peyton Manning threw a lot of picks in his first rookie year there.
That's what I'm saying. So it's just, but it's rare for that to happen, and I have a hard time believing Sam Darnold's the next Peyton Manning. And the reason being on top of that is now Adam Gase has totally botched this job. He has shown no true progression out of Sam Darnold. And when you have a young quarterback like that, and you have a coach who has clearly not allowed this team to make the steps that it was supposed to, at that point in the New York market, ownership and fans are calling for his head. Get him out of there. Get somebody in there that's going to nurture this offense, nurture this quarterback, and you have to do it now, immediately, this week. It has to be done. You know why? Because otherwise, he's going to develop terrible habits. He's going to fall into the pit of misery. We're all going to forget about Sam Darnold, and he's just going to be another has-been, another Blake Bortles, Mitchell Trubisky, another ridiculous story where he got drafted way higher than he should have been, and he'll be nothing but maybe a career backup for the next few years before he decides to retire and call it quits.
And that's a fine line. Either is Peyton Manning or is a career backup.
That's it. He's Peyton Manning or he's Ryan Leaf. That's his. That's he's got the 1-2.
Yeah. Well, he can't be.
That's why it's got to be Adam Gase.
Yeah, he can't be Josh McCown. He has to be like Hall of Famer or total bust. Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Well, that was his ceiling to his basement. Coming in. So I'm just holding him by most of the media standards.
Okay. So the second question, have you guys go back and forth about my team.
Favorite question.
My team, the Cleveland Browns, are they going to the playoffs this year?
So I'm gonna start this one off and say, as diehard of a Seahawks fan as I am, I have a little secret sin. I have a little secret crush, and that's the Browns. I love the Browns. Deep down, I always root for them. I want to see them succeed. I think it's just gotten like so sad, like how bad they've been for so long. I'm like, just please, for the love of God. So every year I pretty much proclaim them to go to the playoffs. However, this year I truly mean it. And I even did my homework to back it up. Okay. So now here's the thing. You have to hear me out. The first and foremost, the coach. No, keep in mind, I'm not saying the Browns are winning a Super Bowl. They are making the playoffs. Kevin Stefanski has the goods to get you to the playoffs, and that's what we watched over in Minnesota. And it's not a super exciting, high-flying offense, anything like that. It's predicated on pounding the football, playing good defense. He's going to get you the playoff, maybe win you a game on the backs of his running backs, and allowing your quarterback to throw minimal times and make minimal errors, right? And so that in itself is a winning recipe just to get to the playoffs. Now, and then when we watch, now that he's left Minnesota, look what Minnesota has turned into. They're a joke. They're a laughing stock at this point compared to what their expectations were coming into the season. But that's for another conversation. Now the Browns are over 500 for the first time. The very first time since 2014. Now we all laugh at that. That's horrible. But that is a good sign. That's a good thing. When teams are doing things for the first time in many, many years, that means they are trending upwards. Now, Myles Garrett has become an absolute superstar on this team. He's got 3 sacks, 2 of which he picked up last season. He's also got a forced fumble in last week. He's got a forced fumble in each of the last 2 games. And he's double teamed on every single play. Meanwhile, you got guys like Sheldon Richardson that are facing one-on-one coverages. Sheldon Richardson is a guy who used to be an anchor for the Seattle Seahawks defensive line. So you got a guy who used to command double teams, now forced in one-on-one situations. But I digress. Now on top of that, you have Nick Chubb, who's playing out of his mind. He's got 4 touchdowns on the season, averaging 5.7 yards a carry with 292 yards, as well as Kareem Hunt averaging 5.2 yards a carry with over 204 yards on the season. Both your first string and your second string running back averaging over 5 yards a carry. That is a winning recipe. That's a recipe for winning. That's a recipe for the playoffs. Feed them the rock. And you know what that has translated to? It has translated to a guy that was coming into this season with do or die almost for his career, and that's Baker Mayfield, who now at this point in the season has 546 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 91.5 rating. He has bounced back tremendously. Why? Because Baker Mayfield statistically plays his best football when he's throwing the ball less than 26 times a game. And that's what he's doing. They're giving the ball to the running backs. These guys are both all-star, superstar, pro running backs. Put the game on their back, and they are going to carry you to the playoffs with that defense. Granted, their secondary is suspect, but when you have a defensive line, a defensive front like the Browns have, you can have a suspect secondary because it's all a matter of getting to the quarterback, and that causes so much disruption and everything else. So again, yes, the Browns, for the first time in years, are going to the playoffs this year, even if it's at 9-7. Damn it, they're going to the playoffs. I'm telling you, you heard it here first.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, I heard it there first for about the millionth time. Speaking of running jokes like the Atlanta Falcons, this guy's been picking the Cleveland Browns to go to the playoffs so many times. I personally turned it into a Facebook meme, I think back in 2013. And I just repost the same meme every single season because I know the joke's still going to be valid. Will the Browns go to the playoffs? No, they're not going to the playoffs. I'll give you 3 very simple reasons why. Austin laid out all these stats and analytics and everything. I'll tell you 3 easy reasons why. Number 1, the division. The division is tough. They got to play the Ravens. They got to play the Steelers. The Ravens are winning the division. The Steelers are going to be my number 1 wild card that I'm choosing to go as a wild card. Number 2 wild card in the AFC, I think it's going to be the Raiders. That leaves no room for the Browns to make the playoffs. Number 2, the schedule is tough. They got to play the Ravens twice. They got to play the Steelers twice. You got the Titans. You got the Raiders. You got the Jaguars. Where are the wins going to come from? I see maybe 3, maybe 4 more wins. I don't think that's going to be enough to get into an AFC wild card. Tell me, where they play the Jets and the Giants, luckily. They play the Bengals again. Where are the wins coming from? You think they're going to sweep the Ravens? I mean, come on, get real. And the number 3 reason, and the most important reason, because it's the Cleveland Browns. It's like becoming the SpongeBob meme that I see on Twitter. How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? It's not going to happen. I don't know why you want to remain in this abusive relationship with your secret lover, the Cleveland Browns, and constantly get hurt and constantly come back to them every season as if things are going to be different. It's not going to be different. You know how they say like the Patriots always find a way to get into the playoffs, to be good? Well, the Browns always find a way to be terrible and to disappoint their fan base. They're not going. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, make sure you drop your comments on that one and let us know who won. Because I'm telling you, the Browns are going. They have the right coaching staff. They have the right personnel. And Baker Mayfield's finally in a position where the games aren't going to rely on his shoulders. So don't forget, they also have Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr. They have some talent, but we'll let Amar
last year. They've had talent. Talent's not the issue.
We'll let Amar get to his next question, though.
Both of you made some very good points, made some very valid points. I do, as a Browns fan, Dylan was exactly right. They always find a way. They always find a way to lose.
I like the players on their team. This isn't me like being a bully to the Browns, but let's just be realistic.
I'm just telling you, eventually the odds have to work in their favor, right?
Trust me, I'm from Seattle.
They have to
I follow the Seattle Mariners, so I know what it's like to be disappointed every year since you were 14 years old.
Right. I'm just saying, at some point they have to make it, and if not any other time, why not now, where they have the right coach, they have the right personnel. If you flip a quarter 100 times, at least once it's going to come up tails, right?
Yeah, that clock theory, I know. It doesn't work with this. We're not flipping a coin. We're playing football in the NFL. They're not going to play.
All right, Amar, what's your last question here?
So, as of right now, there are 8 NFL teams that don't have a win, right? So you got the Jets, Bengals, the Texans, Broncos, Giants, Eagles, Vikings, and the Falcons. So out of those 8 winless teams, which one has been the most surprising to you?
Well, for me, the most surprising is definitely the Minnesota Vikings. And I'll tell you why. Because last year, not only were they playoff team, they went to the divisional round of the playoffs. This was a high-flying offense. They have a great defense. They have a good coach. I know they lost a couple pieces. They lost Stephon Diggs. He went to the Bills, but he wasn't their entire offense. They still got Adam Thielen. They still got Dalvin Cook. They still got Kirk Cousins. They still got a decent O-line, a really good defense. Kyle Rudolph, I don't understand why this team was so terrible. You mentioned the offensive coordinator's gone, but it's not like they didn't replace the guy. It's not like they have no one calling plays, but sometimes that's what it looks like. Kirk Cousins has been atrocious. I mean, I think in the first 3 games, he's got 6 interceptions already. Like, what? Someone do the math for me. I'm a journalist, so I'm not good at math. What is he on pace for? 1 million? I don't know. It doesn't look terrible so far. And I looked at the schedule. They got the Texans next. They got the Seahawks after that. They're staring 0-5 in the face right now. It does not look good in Minnesota.
That you actually make a very, very compelling argument for that. especially with the fact that, not a lot of people really saw the Vikings were supposed to be a formidable team this year. They were supposed to really come in and make some noise and get back on pace to making it to the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which is actually talking about schedule in and of itself. Why I myself, my team, my most surprising team is the Falcons. Like I said, I would be talking about them later.
That's called the tease in the business. Yeah.
You better believe it. We're getting this shit down. We're making moves, buddy. We're getting professional. Now, the Falcons, though they didn't, they weren't some like potential Super Bowl bound team, whatever the case, they made a lot of adjustments to their defense, right? That's always kind of been their Achilles heel all the way back to losing that Super Bowl that they did. It's their defense needed major adjustments. Now, they ended the 2019-2020 season, their last 8 games, they ended 6-2. So, and the largest contribution to that 6-2 turnaround was their defense. Their defense started making the necessary adjustments. They started picking up. They started playing really well. And then you go into this offense or in this offseason where they made a big-time signing in Dante Fowler. They made a few adjustments. They made a few key moves that were for the better. For like the defense was supposed to get even better just along with the continuity that they already had. And then you compound that on the fact that you've got Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, Hayden Hurst, Matt Ryan. You've got this explosive, high-flying offense that can absolutely gun it with the best offenses of today, in terms of points wise, everything else like that. But again, we start the season and here we are at 0-3, and all 3 games they've given up a lead at some point, right? They just keep blowing it. Their defense is giving up 36 points per game.
That's bad.
That's the most in the league. You're giving up 36 points a game, and you're an NFL team. Now, I will chalk some of that up because I have heard in some of the major deep, detailed podcasts that I listen to myself, that's kind of been the story around the league. Usually when there's a training camp in this COVID season where we didn't have training camp, didn't have preseason, usually when there is a training camp, defense is always the first to kind of turn it on and get on the same page, all of these things, and then the offense plays catch up. Now, as we've started the season, it's been an absolute reverse. Something to keep in mind, this is the first time in NFL history that 2 teams after week 3 are averaging over 35 points a game. That would be the Seahawks, number 2, averaging over 35 points a game, and the Falcons' next opponent, and that's the Packers, that are averaging 40.6 points a game. Through 3 weeks, they are averaging over 40 points. That is not just an Aaron Rodgers is great problem. That's a defense in the NFL sucks problem. Just league-wide, it's terrible. So
and
I'll
said
give
Aaron
him
Rodgers needed more receivers in order to play well.
Yeah, no kidding.
46 points a game.
So don't get me wrong. So I'll give him a little bit of grace on that, but that's why it's so confusing to me, right? Because if this is the route that we've gone where the offenses have jumped out of the gate like that, and that's what's winning games, then why cannot one of the top offenses in the league in terms of numbers and stats and passing yards and touchdowns and everything else, why can't they put together a win? Why can't they close a damn game? Right? You do have some injury issues. Marlon Davidson's injured. He was their second-round pick. Grady Jarrett, he had a hip injury against Chicago. Dante Fowler, who we talked about a little bit, he's playing on an ankle injury. Darqueze Dennard's on IR. I mean, yes, there are some injury issues, but for the love of God, we're watching some of the top 10 defenses in the league totally choke and give up yards and yards, but yet offenses are coming back and playing even better. So why is it that when you have Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, Hayden Hurst, Julio Jones, a pretty decent offensive line, Like, what the hell are you guys doing down there? I was blown away by it. I never saw it coming. Granted, I didn't think that they were going to be a Super Bowl team or even a playoff team necessarily, maybe a wild card team, but I never saw them starting the season like they have. It's mind-boggling.
Apparently, Austin hasn't been watching football the last few years. Like I said, this should be the least surprising 0-3 team because the Falcons are just, like I said, it's their gimmick now to blow games. Everyone who watched the Cowboys game, watch Hayden Hurst, as you said, star tight end, sign with the team, watch the ball spin around 50 times and told his teammates don't touch it. And then the Cowboys jumped on it and they lost the freaking game. Like, you can throw all the stats and defense you want, but for some reason there's something wrong in Atlanta. I don't know if it's the coaching. I don't know if it's the players. Something's in their heads, man.
Buddy,
it's like a curse at this point.
I'll tell you what, too. I can't even remember who it was that I was listening to. Maybe it was MMQB, but they were talking about it on the podcast there, where they're like, we don't get it either. We don't understand why the Falcons keep it. They said that Dan Quinn over the last 3 years, this guy has tried to change the whole culture, like to a point where, especially because defense has been their biggest problem, where like defensive players, as they walk to the locker room, to the cafeteria for lunch or whatever, there's like signage or whatever signage on the walls where it's like, hey, you have to stop and you have to do some kind of activity or defensive whatever, maybe prevent somebody from walking down the hallway or what. I don't know. I'm making jokes of it, light of it at this point, but they're really like just to keep that mindset of finishing, of closing, of playing great, and I get it. You're right, because it has become almost a running joke. But again, when you're talking about a season when offense has reigned supreme, how is it that an offense like this cannot keep up? You've got an MVP quarterback. You have a Hall of Fame wide receiver. You have Calvin Ridley is going to end the season as one of the best wide receivers in the league. At least that's what he's on pace for. And why can't they win a damn game? Why can't they score any points in the fourth quarter?
The way they lose games is the kind of stuff that makes you throw your controller against the wall when you're playing.
It does. I don't even like the Falcons. I don't even care about them.
It's hard not to be frustrated.
To me,
I've never been so mad as I watched them choke against the Cowboys, and I don't care about the Cowboys or the Falcons.
No,
I was
not
mad
at all.
watching the game. How do you not fall on the ball?
I've created a whole freaking.
How do you not know that you can touch the ball before 10 yards? It's like none of the players knew, and none of the coaches reminded them. There's no fans, so you can probably hear coaches, if they were to scream from the sideline, jump on the damn ball.
That's even worse.
Doing anything.
Oh my God!
Dan Quinn at every press conference is just like, well, we got to learn a lesson from this one. Well, we got to learn a lesson.
Read the goddamn playbook or rule book. That's what you got to learn.
How many lessons do you got to learn before you give this back, man? Something's going to happen.
Honestly,
I don't think Dan Quinn makes the season.
I don't even know that firing Dan Quinn fixes it, though. Honestly, I mean, how do you replace it? You know what I mean? That's the problem. Julio Jones has been out, I think, the last at least 1, maybe 2 weeks because of some injury. I think he's vying to get traded, which Amar and I will get into that later on in the show with my hot take. But what does it fix, right? Like, the players are still the players. It's not like they're going to toss the playbook out and bring in a new one. And this COVID season and stuff, and Amar brought up a great point earlier in the show when we kind of touched on this, was like with the COVID procedures and everything, how hard has it got to be to bring coaches in for interviews and to be honest, if you're firing Dan Quinn, yard that whole freaking coaching staff, because that defensive coordinator and that offensive coordinator are just as much. They're all cut.
Special teams coach wouldn't have got on the bus to go back to Atlanta from Dallas if I was running.
Exactly. Clean house. Get rid of all of them.
He'll be at the stadium.
Blow the whole thing up. That's what I'm saying. But how do you do that right now, right?
And I agree with you. I don't think firing Dan Quinn is going to automatically fix it, but there needs to be some accountability. If you remember, I can't remember how many seasons ago, when Andy Reid was coaching, I think he was still coaching the Eagles, and their defense was terrible. He fired the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
You got to show some accountability. You got to hold someone accountable. That's the thing that's frustrating about Dan Quinn, is he doesn't really look like, I'm sure it bothers him, but he's got a great poker face.
Right.
Learn a lesson from this. I'd be furious. Like, you've got to talk to the special teams coach or people on the special teams. I know you're not going to fire the team, but something's got to happen. And I think Arthur Blank is going to fire Dan Quinn before the season is over. And I think there's going to be interim head coach, and I think you're going to hire somebody new next season.
You make a good point. You make a good point on that for sure.
Right. So that, and that's why we brought Dylan in. That's what we wanted. We wanted this, this back and forth rapport with two people that have known each other for a real long time. Kind of grew up together, and that they're gonna, crack on each other, bring that intensity. That I'm not gonna go at Austin with, because it's like, I'm not his brother. So, it's like, that's not gonna,
you seem like a nice guy too.
Well, yeah, generally. But yeah, Dylan, thanks a lot for coming on. If you guys out there, as you're listening to this, go in those comments and tell us who you think won the debates. Just to recap, first question was, which coach do you think is on the hottest seat? Austin took Adam Gase of the Jets. Dylan took Dan Quinn of the Falcons. We asked, are the Browns going to make the playoffs? Austin said, yeah. Dylan said, no. And then, what's the most surprising winless team? And Austin took the Falcons. Dylan took the Vikings. So,
thank you so
much.
I
appreciate
Dylan.
You guys having me on. I had a blast. And one more time, that's Twitter, Dylan Reports. I need those followers. Come on. Please. Give me a reason to come back.
Do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Dylan, make sure you share this on your Twitter. Make sure you share it on your Facebook. Let's get people listening, because goddamn, we want to come back too. So hit that subscribe button, drop that comment, let us know who you think won. Hit that like button, and don't forget to
you're already in danger of cancellation.
Absolutely. Don't forget to hit that little bell there too to turn on notifications so you can be notified whenever we air a new show. So we are going to say goodbye to Dylan. Bye, Dylan. Go ahead and get the hell out of here.
All right. All right.
And we are going to move into our final segment of the night.
This is so backstory. So the way Austin and I met, where we were in a couple of different sports groups together, like on Facebook, right? So anyone out there who is in Facebook sports groups, or who follows sports on Twitter, any kind of social media, or if you watch the TV argument shows, as I call them, you are familiar with dumb memes and cold takes. So that was going to be the segment that we want to do, is just kind of like the coldest take or the dumbest meme that we've seen all week. So we can either get right into that, or also, I know you said you had a hot take of your own.
So I do have a hot take of my own that may very well become a cold take, but I feel pretty confident in it. So I'd like to hit that first. The hot take that I have is Julio Jones. I think that this season, and I'll put a warm take on it. I think potentially before the end of the season, but at the very least, this is the last season that we see Julio Jones in an Atlanta Falcons jersey. I think that however it's got to be done, he is done. And I think that, as I kind of touched in the Sibling Rivalries segment there, I think that him not playing, I think it has a little more to do with the preservation of him, and I think we're getting to a point where Calvin Ridley's kind of showing out as a star again, and Julio Jones still has some left in the tank. So what do you do at this point? What you do is you trade away your Hall of Fame wide receiver. You get yourself a handful of picks, or at least a second rounder, third rounder, and you move forward with Calvin Ridley and let whoever else emerge and kind of build your team from there. But yes, that's my hot take, that this is the last season, if not halfway through, but by the trade deadline, we won't see Julio Jones in an Atlanta Falcons jersey ever again.
Now, that's a take that makes sense, and I can buy that argument because you can back it up. You can give some evidence to it, and something that I can realistically see. Now, the opposite of that is your cold take, and which we tend to see in these Facebook groups and on sports Twitter. So, what was the cold take that you saw this week?
So the cold take that I guess I didn't, it wasn't necessarily that I saw it this week. It kind of reemerged this last week. And a lot of that's because of how terrible this combination has been. Pete Prisco. Mr. Pete Prisco, you're getting called out. You got a blue check mark on Twitter. Most people in the sports world know who you are, and they take your word as gospel, sir. And you said, and I quote, on January 9th of 2019, Gase and Darnold will be a great match. And they are absolutely not. They're horrible. In fact, they are so horrible that I'm calling for the head of Adam Gase to salvage the career of Sam Darnold. That's how horrible they have been together. That is a freezing cold take. What evidence you had to see? That's the problem. Is Adam Gase once shook hands? Who was it? It was Peyton Manning, right? Isn't that who that's his claim to fame? Is Peyton?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Right. So he coached Peyton Manning, a guy who coming into the league, just like Andrew Luck, just like a lot, there's guys like Aaron Rodgers, even though he had to sit, guys like that came in the league, you're like, man, he's going to be a quarterback. Like that guy, like he's going to have to try harder to screw it up than he is to be great, right? Just who he is. So it's kind of, he was just given this talent, and I'm not saying he didn't put the work in to make him great, but you take that and he's made a career out of that. And so he's just gotten this like quarterback guru. He's going to always make it work. And then he screws it up in Miami, and we saw what happened there. He skirted away with none of the blame, and we all made fun of Jay Cutler, and we all made fun of the Miami Dolphins roster. And then he comes over to New York, and he gets this young quarterback that everybody thought that he was just going to but again, this was a quarterback who came into the league with a ton of questions, almost as many questions as Mitch Trubisky and Blake Bortles. Like a lot of questions. A lot of people thought he had the arm talent, but that his decision making, his accuracy, his inability to throw the ball away, his ability to turn the ball. I mean, just a lot more questions than you get with him than a guy like Peyton Manning, for instance. So I think just this idea of Pete Prisco, along with a lot of others, he's not the only one to catch the shade, that all of a sudden Adam Gase was going to turn Sam Darnold into this franchise Hall of Fame legend quarterback. Never going to happen. Why you put that out on the Twitter sphere, I will never know, but own it, bud. Own it.
Yeah. So the cold take I saw, and it was in a private sports group. So I won't use the person's name because if you put your opinion out there in public and make it shareable for everyone to see, then yeah, we'll call you out. But if you make it private, like okay, maybe you don't want your name up there, whatever.
Right.
So this take, and this was just made yesterday, I believe, and in an NBA kind of an NBA Finals preview type of post, and they said, I quote, Tyler Herro is a better offensive player than LeBron James. All I'm going to say about that is watch the NBA Finals starting this week, and you'll see. That's all we can say.
You can't. There's no one. You can't honestly believe that. There's no one who, even the guy who said it, you can't honestly believe that Tyler Herro is a better offense. Like, there's just no way. Not even in the same breath. I like Tyler Herro. Yeah, I love the kid. I think he's becoming my new favorite player in the NBA. He's not afraid to shoot. He's got a great shot. He has a huge, bright future. But Tyler Herro will be lucky, absolutely lucky, to even be in the same breath as LeBron James by the time his career ends, let alone being a better offensive player than LeBron James currently right now. It's just That's crazy.
Yeah. This is the number one all-time playoff scorer, and I think number 3 in assists that we're talking about.
And he's number 3 in all-time playoff three-pointers made.
Yeah.
More minutes played than anybody else. And he's up there in top 5 for finals appearances. And he's won 3 rings. And he's won MVPs. And he's, you know what I mean? Like,
And, Tyler Herro, great young player. He can go off. He
had a good Eastern Conference series.
Yeah, he can shoot, he can score, but like, come on. So
again, that's that amnesia, that regular season amnesia. Because here's the funny thing is that people forget during the regular season, Robinson and Herro, though they were, they're serviceable players, none was the guy. None was the guy. He finished second in Rookie of the Year voting. He was the superstar to be alongside Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler. So Jimmy Buckets. But that he was the guy. And now, don't get me wrong, Hero's been playing great. He's been the favorable matchup, all of that stuff. But let's pump our brakes and realize that this kid's just kind of getting to toe tap in the limelight a little bit. You know what I mean? It takes a lot to stay here. But even winning this series, if they were somehow able to pull out this series win and all that, he would have to win finals MVP to even get within, just to even be considered a star. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much that goes. That would be the thing that catapults him to stardom. And then it would be, okay, with these expectations, how does he play next season? So let's be real here.
Yep. So you ready to take us out of here?
All right. Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you so much. Those of you who have watched, I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed our segments. I hope you enjoyed our takes. We have enjoyed doing this. It means a lot to us, those of you who have viewed. If you haven't yet, make sure you drop a comment for the Sibling Rivalries segment and for anything else that Amar and I have talked about. If you have any comments on it, thoughts, whatever, we do read those comments. We will respond to them. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, to catch Bring Your A Game. That is this show here. Don't forget, we have our starting 5, which is all 5 of us here that we post weekly, as well as other shows that go up that you might find interest in. So, and again, hit that little bell in the corner there, right next to the subscribe button, to be notified every single time a video goes up. So thank you guys again so much. It means the world to us. I hope you guys have a good one, and make sure to come back next week when we're talking week 4, the NBA finals. Things are going to be heating up big time. It's going to be a blast. We're going to be able to talk about another amazing Russell Wilson performance, another LeBron James dominating final series. These are just a few things that I'm going to throw out there that I believe will happen. But Amar, what are you excited for next week's show about what we're going to be inevitably talking about?
You're going to have the finals. You're going to have NFL, college football. I think it's college football has really started now. I feel because the SEC is playing. It's just like, okay, like this feels like the real season now. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, I think those are kind of the big 3. You got the WNBA finals, baseball playoffs are underway. It's a lot going on. It's a busy time of year. No fans in the building, but busy time of year.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, well, especially with no fans in the building, because there's more people that are going to be coming to shows like this to get their sports take. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like us, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button, and until next time, remember, when you come to this show, you better bring your A game. You better come correct. I appreciate y'all. Have a good night.